Hello. Can you hear me? Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
I hear you, Ruth.
Oh, cool.
I'm behind you.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I was like, where's that voice? Hello, Scott. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so stream is started. I'm going to go ahead and set Discord up also.
Oh, great.
And then if you have some time afterwards around, maybe we can just check in briefly. But if you don't, we can find a different time.
Oh, yeah, it should be good.
Cool. All right, so let's see, where's our stage?
Speaking of, that reminds me to pick a time to talk to you myself.
Yeah, everybody needs to set up their... Oh, Zoom or Discord looks like it's changed its layout a little bit. That's interesting.
Oh?
At least for...
Actually, yeah, it is. No, I don't know.
Yeah. Go live.
Sometimes we found on mobile that people can accidentally move channels.
Uh-huh.
Like people, like your mods or people that have that power.
Huh.
And then it gets weird because you're like, wait, was that like that? Or am I tripping? Or was that like...
Yeah. No, it looks like they just have the options a little bit differently on the stage. The icons are a little different and there's more, I don't know, it's just slightly different. Cool. Okay.
Welcome, Bonnie.
We are live.
Welcome back from your
Hello.
trip.
Yeah, arrived 2 a.m.
2 a.m. off, but probably going through a little bit of jet lag too, I imagine.
Yeah.
Your Zoom form just messed me up, and I like melded my real name and my username together in the first name last name field because I'm barely awake.
Nice.
Welcome, KT.
Hey.
Put my name as Carly Paker.
Nice.
What the fuck?
Good pseudonym. Great. So yeah, hey, I think I heard you mention that we're live. So
yep,
yeah, we can go ahead and get started here.
Yep.
Great. Thanks for that. Let's see, we got a couple of chats over here. Oh, we got Fuzz online. Hello, Fuzz. Yeah, me too. Chapter 5 is pretty cool. So yeah, let's get started here. Yeah, welcome to another The Body Keeps the Score review event. This week we're going to do Chapter 5. And just want to give another shout out to the group for, showing up each week with a new chapter and new commentary. It's such a great way to read through the book. As I mentioned earlier in the run, actually never got myself through the whole book. Always had some sort of interruption as I was getting through it. So, as we start getting into the chapters that I haven't read yet, I'm really excited to, read those parts for the first time and hear everybody's feedback. So thank you for attending and making the time and the effort and the energy. Couple of norms, just to keep the event on track and safe for any deep sharing. We're not a therapy group or a replacement for therapy. Can consider us like a peer-to-peer group that's just exploring, mental wellness and, wisdom for having a better day. Please avoid fixing. I know sometimes when you hear somebody in pain, myself included, you really want to say like, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? but it can be difficult to hear for somebody that's sharing something that's challenging for them. So, we just kind of pause those comments and only if they ask for advice. INU statement hygiene. We want to use statements like "I think I heard" or "I feel what I understood." Sometimes when you phrase something as "you said," it can feel judgmental and threatening, especially when we're talking about sensitive memories in some cases. And confidentiality, we don't have this event, so we can go to the black cat later and say, like, did you hear so and so? None of that, absolutely not, none of that. But, just be cognizant that we do stream the event for accessibility for people that can't get into headset or couldn't make the time. So, just be aware that the stream is out there and, keep your shares aware of that. We have a hand raise tool just to help with, being able to jump in a conversation. Sometimes if we get going and we have some back and forth, but you want to have some input, feel free to use the hand raise tool to get, nice lineup of our commentary, and I'll call, first in, first out. So just by clicking the squirrel, and then there's a red X if you want to take yourself off the board, if you changed your mind and, would rather save a share for another time. If you are open to feedback on something that you're facing, just mention that to the group, like, have this situation and I would like to hear what others have experienced or think. And also we have the Bridgemakers Discord up there on the screen. So if you want some topic input during the week in between events, we have some conversation going on in the Discord window over on the Bridgemakers Discord. So yeah, feel free to join and share what's going on there. So yeah, interesting way to start out chapter 5. We start out with Dr. Vanderkolk's thoughts on Darwin and how Darwin kind of influenced his understanding of the mind and body connection. And he cites some of Darwin's work where Darwin, the famous Charles Darwin that sort of keyed the our knowledge that there's an evolutionary process that we come from, that we have common ancestors that have branched off and opened up a whole new world of understanding where we came from and how we work. And he said, like all animals, we have that feeling of when our hair stands up, like if we have that spidey sense, like something is amiss in our environment and our hairs can physically stand up, and we know what that feels like. You get kind of the goosebumps and, that prickly feeling. Also baring your teeth when you're enraged. You get that email and you just find yourself kind of clenching your jaw as you read it because it's not something you wanted to hear. Darwin said these can only be understood as vestiges of a long evolutionary process. So this feeling kind of informs action is what he's saying here, and that you can observe the behavior in animals, and with our link to being part of the animal kingdom, we also have this part of the mind body brain nervous system connection that our emotions and our actions correlate. And I really loved this part of the chapter too, where Dr. Vanderkolk was pointing out how Darwin, linked the emotions and the body's expression of those emotions together through things like facial expressions. When we're happy, we tend to smile. Our eyes kind of twinkle, and like we talked about earlier, if we're angry, we might clench our jaw or furl our brow. These are kind of universal expressions of emotion that we all share, and unless you're actively working on it through like espionage training or just playing poker, where you try to flatten out those tells of different emotions. We go throughout our whole day just wearing our mood, on our body through our posture and through our facial expressions, and how we're kind of moving through the environment. These are all tells of what's happening inside of our body and how we feel. So he really emphasized that connection between our emotions and our physical presence and movements. And you can even see these expressions in different types of animals too. Some of us learn to read our pets through their body language. I really always jump at the chance to share the monkey that stole the camera and took a selfie of himself. It's one of my favorite pictures of all time. And, of course, Grumpy Cat has the quintessential, I shouldn't have got out of bed today look. And, Dr. Vanderkolk went on to say that you could watch a movie in a different language, and although you might miss intricacies of the plot, you can kind of get an idea of like who's related to who and in what way, what part of the story they're contributing to through their actions and through their body language. So it's interesting to kind of come back to the science that Dr. Vanderkolk is presenting as this mind-body connection that we especially in the Western world have kind of, not really keyed into for so many years. We can go back to even Darwin's writings where he has, these snippets of how connected they are. And this is one expression of that connection. And it's even rooted in our language. The word emote derives from, I'll butcher this pronunciation, but is it emovere? Emovere? This is the Latin pronunciation. But the literal translation is to move out. So it's like your feeling is moving outward through expressions in your physical body. And, Darwin goes on to say in his writings that the fundamental purpose of emotion is to initiate movement that will restore the organism to safety and physical equilibrium. So these emotions are kind of our instruction guide of, how do we get to a safe and content state, whether it's hungry or being in danger, or where's the most likely place I'll find a job. These emotions are what like inform our action. So, once again, this very rooted connection that can almost go by like at a subconscious level if we don't stop and pause and practice an awareness of it. But where it goes into the trauma territory that Dr. Vanderkolk studies is when you get stuck in a survival mode, the signals are not the variable, baseline that you might experience in life, but they're more like constant feelings of being unsafe or being worried. If you have an unreconciled trauma where, memories and triggers are continually returning, on a weekly or daily basis, your body's feeling is, I'm not safe, something needs to be fixed. And that informs the posture and facial expressions that we carry. So it's another aspect of trauma that can affect our daily lives, where these emotions are now informing our actions, and all of the signals get kind of curved in that direction. And Darwin he uses this kind of older term that I know, just like Latin, I'll struggle with here, but the the pneumogastric nerve, if I'm saying that right, is the more modern the more modern term for that now is the vagus nerve, and not Vegas like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but the vagus nerve as in the organ in our body. And what you can think of as the vagus nerve is, in the earlier chapters, like last week, we talked a lot about our brain, the different components of our brain, our frontal cortex, the limbic system that contains like the amygdala and our brainstem, and how we have these kind of three evolutionary phases of our brain and how they're all sort of wired together. Well, the wiring is this vagus nerve. Your signals that come from your body, like your sense of touch, hearing, these senses all travel through the vagus nerve into your brain to give you that information, and then your brain in turn turns that signal around and goes back down the vagus nerve to instruct your body how to deal with that information. Do we need to move in some way, or do I need to maybe have a deeper breath? Am I short of oxygen? So if you think of like a network of wired telegraphs, the vagus nerve is like the telephone wiring that goes through your body and sends all these signals back and forth between our brains and our organs. And there's a lot of feeling, that comes from emotion. They sort of overlap these terms where they can mean an emotional state, but they're also like a physical sensation, right? Like, so if we think of the word heartache, that is typically associated with something like a loss or a breakup or just bad news. But, the term also means your heart, is physically uncomfortable. And I don't think there's any coincidence in that. When we describe heartache, it's because the sensation of that emotion, actually has a physical feeling. We talk about news that can be a gut punch. Understanding the new understanding of something that just didn't go the way you hoped for in a big way, we feel that in our gut. That's an emotion that translates into a physical feeling. I was brought to my knees, yet again, something that's so devastating, like you have to take a seat. Again, that is emotion informing our movement. And there's this wonderful movie that I watched, Till There Was You, kind of a silly, like 90s rom-com. But there was this line in there that just always kind of imprinted on me, where this young lady kind of found out the true colors of this romantic interest that she was in. And, he was obviously not the person for her, but also in a very hurtful way. And she kind of goes down to her knees and she says this line, "This is the part where your heart actually hurts." And I'll never forget that, because it was like, I happened to be going through like a breakup at the time, and I was like, wow, like my heart actually does hurt. And I'll never forget like the relatability of what that line meant. And we go on to explore a lot about what's called the autonomic nervous system. So if we were to kind of break down the components of the nervous system into their sort of base levels, the nervous system, that encompasses everything. That's, our whole brain stem, all of that wiring that we're talking about that's connected to our organs. Like, so all of the nerves and systems throughout our entire body, that's comprising the entire nervous system. But you can break that into two components. Which is the central nervous system, is our brain and our spine. So that's everything that is encompassed in those components. And then there's the peripheral nervous system, which is all like the individual nerves that run through our body, including the vagus nerve that we talked about, and all of those nerves that connect to our organs and our sensory functions, like, touching, hearing, tasting. And then furthermore, you can break the peripheral nervous system down into two components called the autonomic nervous system. And when you think autonomic, a key word to remember is auto, because these are the automatic, like involuntary functions of our body. So if you think like heartbeat or digestion or blinking, these things our body sort of does just without really any conscious thought of it. This is all wired through our autonomic nervous system. And then we have the somatic nervous system, which is, deciding to physically move. These are the conscious movements and control over our body. And why it's important to kind of break this system down is if we follow the autonomic nervous system, we get into these two terms called sympathetic and parasympathetic. And what these are is your two states of arousal. Sympathetic is when your amygdala is processing those stress hormones, telling your body that you need to be ready to do a fight or a flight. And the sympathetic nervous system is what raises our energy and our alert level. And the opposite of that is the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is when your body sends signals to calm it down, to bring down your heart rate. And where this gets important is you study PTSD or you have counseling. Some counselors will even teach us about this system, about sympathetic and parasympathetic, and techniques for how to come out of a parasympathetic state or into a parasympathetic state from a sympathetic state, to try to lower that energy, to bring down your heartbeat and your stress levels. It's an important technique to learn in the process of healing. And then on the somatic side, the nervous system is mainly collecting input, like what we're smelling, what we're feeling, touching, hearing, and translating that into output. What should I do with that information? How should I move or react? So, just an important diagram to kind of, keep in mind as we go through and talk about these future topics. And I think I see a couple of comments here. Let's see. Oh, nice. We got we got some comments. Like emotions are like visual mimetics. Oh, you stumped me there. I don't even know that word. Mimetics that can travel from person to person via mirror neurons. Oh yeah. Okay, I'm totally getting you there. Yeah, like a facial expression is almost like infectious, right? Somebody comes into a room with a big old smile, that changes everybody's feeling, that's in that room. And let's see, Carl, oh yeah, just kind of keeping up on the discussion there in the Discord. That's great. So here's another way to think about this. The autonomic, involuntary reaction to situations as a fight or a flight, or another opposite term is rest and digest. So, when we're in that fight and flight, the body engages the sympathetic nervous system, which is the wiring that sends all the signals to our body, like increase your heartbeat, turn off digestion, really, take your breathing down a notch. Shallow breathing is another symptom of having a sympathetic response. And then, of course, parasympathetic is the opposite, where it's like slow your heart rate, um, send the signal to your gut to continue digestion. This is another interesting thing to think about as well, is like these connections between trauma and gastrointestinal and digestion type of issues, like acid reflux, constipation, bloating. These can be signs of a lot of different ailments. The body has infinite ways of having difficulties. But one of the key components of, being triggered or being in a trauma experience is that the sympathetic nervous system sends signals to your gut to like stop digesting, because the design there is, if you're running for your life from a tiger, you don't need to digest your McDonald's right at that moment. You can do that later if you survive. So all of your systems, resources are being redirected to like running and escaping and being as fast as possible. So all of the blood flow that it takes for digestion, your body redirects that. And so stressful situations, you start feeling gassy. This is where we have the physical manifestations of difficult memories. And this is what makes breathing so interesting. Is breathing is this one part of our physical process that we can sort of flip between states. Breathing is involuntary. If you're not thinking about it, your body continues to take in breaths, exhale. However, you can sort of take over, right? And you can decide like, oh, okay, I'm going to just take a deeper breath here. I'm going to exhale with purpose. I'm going to, there's these box breathing techniques, right? Where you like breathe in for 4 seconds, you pause for 4 seconds, then breathe out for 4 seconds. That's somatic, right? So it's interesting that we can flip a bodily function in between this somatic and autonomic state. Because if you think about it, like imagine being able to take control of like your kidney or something, right? Like, and actually like working your kidney consciously through like its processes of what it does. Like, I have no idea what that would be like experience wise. I can't even like imagine it. But yet we can do that with our breath. And I just find that so interesting. And it's one of the reasons that breathing techniques are so fundamental to exercises like yoga and mindfulness, because it's a connection between your body and your mind, where you can physically control an aspect of your nervous system and send deliberate signals to let your nervous system know, things are okay. Because as we talked about in the earlier events, like the bear in the box example, like our limbic system part of our brain, kind of our old like lizard animal brain, it doesn't understand like seeing and understanding and assessing situations. Like it only understands this black and white, danger not danger way of seeing the world. So if we take a deep breath and then we exhale very slowly and purposefully, what that does is it sends a signal through your nervous system back up that vagus nerve to your amygdala to then say, like, actually, there's really nothing to be worried about, because I could never have taken this deep, relaxing breath if we were in a dangerous situation. So the activity of controlling that really lengthy, relaxing breath actually physically communicates to your nervous system that we want to engage the parasympathetic process and slow everything down and start processing those stress hormones out of our body. So there's a term, somatization, which is the body's translation of emotion into the physical experience. So we talked about like the digestion system shutting down. You know, that can be like a form of somatization of the emotion manifesting in a physical response. And I don't remember if the chapter mentioned it individually or not, but you might hear about polyvagal theory, which is the study of the vagus nerve and its function in our body. And there's a lot of healing processes that come out of this theory, ways to calm the body, and a lot of wellness, like physical wellness. There's a special massage that's called rolfing. I might not be pronouncing that correctly, but it's a very targeted technique at massaging trauma like out of the physical body by like realigning systems to sort of function. Over time your body adjusts to stress. Rolfing tries to kind of get your body into its natural alignment for everything to flow much better. And I really like seeking counselors that have a background study in polyvagal theory or somatic experiencing. And even in the Psychology Today website that has a really great counseling finder capability, you can put somatic as a filter, which gives you a nice list of counselors that are available in your area that have studied this kind of brain-body connection in relation to traumatic experiences. And I kind of, this was one of the parts of the chapter where I sort of stopped and like read it again a few times because I thought it was a really powerful sentence. And again, we have somebody here who had studied for decades the process of trauma and how it impacts people and relationships. And this is what they said. Being able to feel safe with other people is probably the single most important aspect of mental health. And, it's like, maybe that should just be on a billboard, like, every billboard in the U.S., for for like a week. Like that's just what every billboard says, because it's really so profound. Is everything that we are wired to experience in life rides on this feeling of safety around others. If we feel safe, our body works much more efficiently, and we don't have the struggles. We talked about, being triggered also interrupts the ability to have imagination, and without imagination, it's difficult to plan. We lose sense of time. So, it sounds like, one of the secrets is, the social aspect. If we can try to find connections in life with people who make us feel safe, maybe that's the secret. And that social support is also about reciprocity. So the feeling of being truly heard and truly seen, and also that we're held in someone else's mind and heart. So it's not necessarily just being around people, right? But being around people who you share a genuine care for. They care for your well-being, and reciprocally, you're also caring about their well-being. And it's again one of the really efficient writing styles of Dr. Vanderkolk, where he just drops these like profound little nuggets of life wisdom in there, and they're sort of like a sentence and then they're gone. So whenever I find one, it's like I always try to pause and say, wow, okay, this is somebody that's been studying this for so long, and here's one of their conclusions. And I just loved reading that part of this chapter. And another thing that he says several times in the book, which I just adore, is that if we find it impossible to find like a human tribe, a group of people that we can reciprocally care about and feel safe around, maybe animals is the key. And I will just shout from the rooftops to the ends of the earth that these programs that put inmates together with rescue animals, like it has to be one of the biggest win-wins of our lifetime to house and shelter rescue animals, with inmates, because there's so much healing that happens there. You have people who, through probably a lot of incidences in their lives that were outside of their controls, like, maybe difficult parents, or, maybe they had to be the parent for their parents, or maybe their parents just abandoned them, when they were little, and they had to navigate the world in a way that ultimately they broke society's rules and ended up in this place. And then you have these animals who are truly abandoned, through their owners giving them up, or maybe in cases where they outlived their owners and they need a home. And finding that connection and making it work, I just, should the whole world just be centered around making this program work? Like, what if we all just, this was like our job? Everybody just focuses on this. I feel like it would fix everything, because everything good would just stem off of doing like one of the most wonderful things that we can do. But I don't know. I'm such an idealist. I need pragmatists around me to make things work. So thanks for listening to some ideas there. So in conclusion, one of the cornerstone pieces of information in chapter 5, I thought, was that we have this autonomic nervous system that's connected to how we feel. How we feel informs what goes through the nervous system to our organs and our body. And you can break the nervous system down into 3 states. Social engagement, which is our super comfortable, like chill level state, where our body's operating normally. There's no stress. We're feeling comfort. We're feeling love. And then there's the fight or flight, and that's when something comes into our environment that we feel we need to react to. And then we can go all the way down to the freeze and shut down state. And, this is where our body and mind have decided there's no fighting back. So what I'm going to do is collapse and hope it passes. And that when it passes, I'm still alive. Like that's the freeze response in a nutshell. But that's baseline, right? So if you kind of follow the safety level gradient there, that's kind of a baseline level of experience for, somebody who is supported and has a big social network of support, has a safety net. That is kind of their state level when it comes to the level of safety. When we come over to the PTSD autonomic nervous system, or ANS, as you can see, we have a state of social engagement, but look how high it is, right? Like look at how narrow that window is of social engagement. So, do you dread going to a party? once you're there, you have a great time. But the thought of going to the party and walking in the door, does that bring anxiety? That can be a sign of this kind of narrow window of social engagement. Fight or flight, these decisions come much higher in the level of safety, where this is how you get these responses where somebody can get cut off in traffic and you barely even see them react. They just slow the car down and go about their day. The other person is, got their finger out the window, blowing the horn. And we can forgive them because we know, like, oh, their body is just having a sympathetic nervous response. So we can kind of go through some. Now, that's not to say they can do whatever they want. I'm not excusing all forms of behavior, but a little bit of cursing out the window, yeah, I can let that go. I understand. And then the freeze shutdown, also much higher. You're reaching that at a much higher level sooner in this process. And one of the things I like to advocate in the experience of healing from trauma too is to not shame the shutdown process, because shutting down is a natural involuntary response. You don't decide. If somebody is if the fire alarm goes off and there's smoke and you can tell there's fire, one person might run out of the room, the other person might have a complete shutdown in fear. That's not because they don't want to survive. That's because the way their body operates is giving them a signal that they can't ignore. So this doesn't happen so much anymore, but I noticed a lot of this when I was younger. Is you would describe a situation and this person would be like, oh, if that was me, I would have done this and this, and all of a sudden they become Chuck Norris in their own mind, right? They would have did a backflip, and they would have done this, they would have done that, they'd have been Rocky Balboa all of a sudden. And it's nope. Actually, if you were in that situation, you probably would have done the exact same thing I did. So, you think of people in bank robberies that just, go numb or maybe faint. If you've ever been threatened by a group of people, so not just a fight one-on-one, but a one-on-six situation, or somebody just completely road rages on you. To freeze in that situation is to be human. Because you didn't become Chuck Norris, it's not a failure. Your human body worked the way that it was designed to. So I always like to advocate, away from shutdown shaming, because shutdown is a very legitimate response. And if you've ever shut down, it's worked because you're here to remember it. So, by all means, look back at those memories and just know that you did your best as a human being in that situation. In our inspiration today, I have kind of a pairing. So the first one's from Confucius. It does not matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop. And I love that because it totally relates to the intention to heal. It's something that doesn't happen overnight. I mean, maybe somebody miraculously somewhere just decided they wanted to be healed and they suddenly were. But in my experience, it can take a long time. I've been at it for, over 15 years. So, maybe it can happen sooner than that because I'm stubborn, even about healing. But just as an example, it doesn't happen in weeks or months. It can happen in years. So, just keep the intention and keep, inching towards the way that you want to be. But this one's really my favorite version of it, which is credited to Winston Churchill, is if you're going through hell, keep going. And, I kind of reserve that one, right? Because it can sort of feel like that just pull yourself up by the bootstrap sort of messageology. But I don't think it's really what it's saying. Like I think it's more on the Confucius level, which is if things are really tough, you know, do your best to just keep going through it because you know there might be no going back. You don't want to just sit in the fire. Just keep inching your way out of it inch by inch, and eventually, you know, I think what Winston Churchill was trying to say is eventually you get out of hell if you keep going. So I just love those two sayings in terms of the healing process. Is it's not fast, but it's very rewarding to stick to. And with that, yeah, let's take hand raises. I'm excited to hear your thoughts about Chapter 5. So we got Heya up first.
Yeah, I'm just curious what your perspective is for, before you've talked about the fawning response as the fourth way we respond when we're in survival mode, and yet today has been mostly focused on fight, flight, and freeze. Where do you think fawn fits into all of this?
Yeah, I'm still kind of trying to figure that out myself. So it's a great question for me to ponder because I do consider fawn a trauma response. Um, I don't see it kind of clearly listed here in the initial chapters. Um, but I think of cases like where somebody was marginalized and had a lot of their autonomy taken from them at a young age. I think they can tend to learn to put others like above their needs. And I kind of consider that a little bit of a fawning, you know, like if if there's one piece of cake left, you know, you would always um, you know, allow another person to take that. I think is kind of in some ways like a form of fawning that can come from from a difficult childhood. You know, overly complimenting, I think, is kind of like another form. A lot of I'm sorry's. I'm not an expert, so I'm not here to try to build like this conscious awareness of individual behaviors. But these are some examples I've personally thought of that I've tried to catch myself in situations at work where if I'm feeling discomfort, if I'm trying to navigate the situation by showering with compliments, you know, I kind of come back to that. Like, am I having like a fawning response right now? And I try to practice awareness of it. Um, it is that kind of a helpful direction for the question? I'm really curious about your thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you went back to that slide that showed the gradients of activation, I wonder if part of what is happening there is, you know, I don't know how much you absorbed or you thought about the dot model at all in identifying those four directions, but fawning can be very parallel to fix, and fix can be part of that. Um, Almost like I go into social engagement, but I'm still in that survival response. So I need a social lubricant to be present and not be paralyzed by my anxiety. And so that's a type of utilizing a substance to be the bridge that my body can't get me to. I can't just genuinely trust and be present with people. So I'm going to lower that activation with substances so I can kind of be in the moment.
Yeah, I feel that's a really great like I'm digesting it right now as like a really great example of what I've been trying to like figure out you know in my own head, which is it can be a form of social engagement. So it can occur when you're in a socially engaged nervous system state. But like, I loved the way you described it as a lubricant. Like, it's sort of a, a helper to keep you from dipping back into this like fear, fight, flight response by sort of, I don't know the right word for it, to sort of minimize your part in the presence and elevate like somebody else's for a feeling of safety.
Yeah, and technically, like, that social lubricant often makes people more emotive. And in that fight, flight, freeze place, the emotions are more like black or white, and they're turn on or turn off, and they're usually like really big. And so giving ourselves that chance to kind of calm down parasympathetic nervous system and be able to turn that energy of fear into excitement, into enthusiasm, into an almost over exaggerated, like, maybe we wouldn't react that way normally, but like it makes us laugh more, etc. So I sometimes think of that fix corner for the dot model as a place of getting your fix and trying to fix what's happening in a way that isn't sustainable long term, but in the short term is a relief to be able to separate people or bridge in a way that isn't completely honest.
I'm so glad that I got to hear your comments before I really tried to like address any more formal like topic of fawning, because it's like it's shaping like a better understanding for me. Like I'm thinking of situations where like finding out somebody like loves the Lord of the Rings or something. Like I'll talk about that topic with over exuberance, like to the end of the earth. And
Right.
I never stopped and thought about like that as a social lubricant. Like I'm now safe in this like highly energized and animated state.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, super interesting.
Mm-hmm. I also think about where they talk about love bombing. So when I perceive somebody as love bombing, that is more a mirror for me of where I'm at in my sympathetic nervous system than necessarily an evidence of a pattern or something that somebody is doing strategically or manipulatively. It also can be a reflection of their sympathetic nervous response where they flip on and off like just pouring it on, and then they go kind of quiet or neutral. And to me that's kind of just like the extreme gears of uh, I'm more in a more utilitarian frame instead of um, a deep connective state where my emotions wouldn't flip so quickly into great enthusiasm and then neutral or antagonistic. In a deep connective state, I'm ramping that up slowly and coming down and almost like swallowing some of that enthusiasm to build a longer term relationship, because I know I'm able to think outside of this moment and believe that I don't have to massively erupt in joy towards somebody to stay connected with them. But when I'm in fight or flight mode and I'm in tunnel vision, it's like do or die. I have to give you all the good stuff right now, or we're not going to be connected. Um, so that's a fear response, right? With still a fawning kind of behavior.
Yeah, I'm still coming back to that term social lubricant. Like
Yeah.
it really fits. Like if you are kind of summoning like an over exuberance to make the situation feel like more comfortable, like
Mm-hmm.
that could be a tiptoe into like the love bombing concept as well. It's like I'm I'm interested, but I might be like overextending because of like just a level of discomfort I have where I don't want my nervous system to collapse because then it's truly over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm bringing this nervous energy like out through a social engagement that might not necessarily be easy to understand, but it's like how I'm coping with the discomfort. Like, gosh, that's such a great a, a great way to kind of tiptoe into the idea of fawning. I look forward to talking about it more because I feel like there's more of it that I could understand.
Yeah, thanks for chatting about it.
Cool. And we got KT up on the board next. I'm glad you could make it. I was a little worried when you spawned back in. Like I thought maybe audio trouble. So sounds like it got fixed up.
No, I accidentally clicked on your invite when I was already here. So it just respawned me. That was all.
Okay.
I had several things to say, but one of them was on the fawning. I also think of that as a way of placating an abuser in the hopes that the abuser will back off, or pass over. And I don't mean that necessarily in physical abuse, although it could be there too, but it's also emotional, political, in those kind of situations.
Yeah.
I've been looking into pain reprocessing therapy, where you have chronic pain and they can put you through a way to retrain your brain so it is not giving you all those pain signals. And the very first step in the pain reprocessing theory is to find a place of safety, one way or another. Make yourself safe, get yourself out of an abusive situation, but also, physically safe around safe people. But also think of if as long as your pain has been checked out medically and there's nothing really wrong there, then you can just accept that the pain is not causing current damage and you are really still safe, even if you're in that. And I had first wandered into that accidentally in yoga when I was doing back bends, not extreme ones, but just bending the spine backwards and it would hurt some. And I had my back checked out completely and nothing wrong. And so I just hung out there at the edge of the pain, not pushing it, just where it started, and realized I was not re-damaging myself. And I learned that the pain faded and I could go into the bend a little deeper. So I think that sense of safety will exacerbate pain and other uncomfortable feelings. And so if you can spend time around more safe people and safe environments, you can begin to regulate and to bring the social engagement system back online. There's another interesting approach to this from a social worker who used, and I'm trying to remember the three letters, and I can't, but I'll put it on the board later if you're interested. I think it was TREs. But basically, he would have people go through a series of exercises that would exhaust the large muscles in the body, and then just relax and let yourself quiver. And the idea behind it is, for example, in the wild, if a gazelle gets attacked by a lion but escapes, it will go off somewhere and just shiver and shake it off and then go back to grazing like nothing ever happened. So it's an attempt to recreate that situation where you can kind of shake it off, but you're in a safe environment when you do this. And the guy that came up with this approach has done a lot of this work in with people with PTSD in places where there have been people have been involved in war, to help them process that trauma and get it out of their system and get back, to the more relaxed, parasympathetic type nervous system. And it's a very short, he's written a book on it. He doesn't charge very much for it, but it has pictures in it and whatnot. And I think it's a pretty useful thing. I put myself through a session. I think it was pretty useful. So it would be something I could recommend to look into. But again, all of this is about dealing with that trauma. And something that I think we'll get to a little bit later on is, especially in trauma, the person was not allowed to escape. The person was immobilized one way or another. And they would have attempted to do something, but kind of froze at that point. So the other idea behind this exercise is let you complete that so you get to the other side. Anyway, those were the things that I wanted to share.
Oh yeah, TRE. That is the correct acronym, and I'm glad you mentioned it because it is actually on my list of intentions to try. Um, I mostly kind of cope through my digital addictions at the moment. So you'll find me, playing video games and watching movies in my free time. I'm motivating to add, some extra activities into that time. And TRE is something I really want to try because, like you said, it's my understanding it comes from the animal kingdom where an animal that has gone through a shutdown that does survive the situation comes through that experience with this like wild gyrating kind of shaking, which is, like you said, the completion of the actions that weren't took. So it doesn't get stored in your muscles as this like potential energy that never got to be kinetic. I am interested, so yeah, if you can post some more info, maybe that's something I can try and sort of add a little report in as we go. I'm interested in it, and another thing that piqued my curiosity about your share too is like the idea that pain, like a chronic pain, can cause a trauma response. Like I'd never thought of that. That your brain could interpret that as like a fight or flight need, even though it's like, oh, my arm's just sore. Um, that's interesting to practice this going to a place of safety and like communicating to your body that although I'm experiencing pain, it's not like a form of danger. It's just a signal that's gonna come. Like, yeah, so that's an interesting practice too. I'd like to hear more about how that goes because I think there's a lot of people that are here and listen to the YouTube that might find that really interesting. Um, I think my bedroom is probably like the safest place. Like when I turn down and like go get ready for bed, like laying down in bed, I I rarely think about like is anything coming for me. So maybe that's the best place I could practice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great! Yeah, wonderful commentary. And yeah, we got Jimmy up on the board. You got the mic, and
Hey,
let me
Scott.
get you the camera. Hi.
Hi. So this was my favorite chapter thus far. In fact, I went through it 3 times just to digest all of it and made sure that I wasn't missing out on much. The I loved the opening about the Latin form of emotion, emovere, to move out. Which plays great with our facial expressions, Love the way that tied in, that we move our emotions out from our body through our face. And I I once heard that even dogs have picked up on this as part of their evolutionary path in communicating with us, that they developed eyebrow muscles so that they can have more facial expressions to communicate their emotions and their needs. Um, the very beginning really hit the hardest on my interest. It just I mean, the entire chapter was great and very informative, but I think the first like 5 to 10 minutes is probably the powerhouse of the chapter. When it talked about how you're defending yourself from invisible assaults, and if you keep yourself in survival mode, that means you aren't giving room for love and care. And I think that is incredibly incredibly important. It's almost like you're believing that I don't it's deserving is not the word I'm looking for, but it's almost like that you're not accepting your love and care to yourself. um Overall, loved this chapter 3 times. Thank you.
That's great. And a wonderful observation of the chapter too, because I also feel that it's like carrying unreconciled memories and PTSD. It's a lot more subtle than I think. I think I think it's a lot more subtle than we understand when we initially start becoming aware of it. Because when we think of danger, we think of like facing something, right? Like something's coming towards us or something's around the corner waiting. Um, but just the subtle feeling of, you know, being this kind of like radar system that's constantly looking for anything that might be off, like all of that extra dedicated energy into, you know, powering our amygdala. If you think of it like a computer processor, you know, if that thing's just currently sitting in the background, you know, running like an antivirus scan, you know, it eventually makes your computer slower. And I think that's the really subtle part of PTSD that I don't know gets a lot of focus, is that, like you said, like all of that, you know, self-compassion and connection that we could have rededicated all of that subtle energy to, you know, it's varying degrees, right? You know, because you know, sometimes PTSD can overwhelm somebody. Sometimes you're functional and it's just in the background. You know, sometimes you get past it because you got this awesome support network and you had the tools for it. Um, but you know, if you are suffering it from it to some degree, you know, that's the part that is balancing the checkbook, right? Is every ounce of energy we put into battling an invisible enemy, you know, that's energy that we couldn't have dedicated to another pastime. So that's my motivation is why I study this and why I try to practice it, because I can't change what happened, but what I can do is try to set up a platform for a rewarding experience, you know, from here on out. You know, one with lots of social engagement and energy, and that's the part that I really look forward to. And yeah, thanks, Jimmy. And we got Carl up on the board too. I'm glad you raised your hand.
Yeah, I kind of had one little comment and then maybe an observation, thoughts I had from stuff I had seen just in general on the internet that, you know, reminded me back to things from the book here. But I was going around my house with my headphones on when the comment about, like, you know, emotions feeling, causing physical pain, that whole, you know, gut punch metaphor. Um, and just a comment, I believe you said something along, sometimes you see something on the news, and my thought was, yeah, there's been a lot of gut punches in the news lately. Um, but then on the more actual observational thought that I had, um, I was reading about people who, actually, it was originally a video of like a kid coming out of anesthesia and saying some just like off the wall stuff, you know, just being just some crazy stuff. I think they were cussing their mom out or something. It was pretty funny. But in the comments, it was all a bunch of people talking about their experiences coming out of anesthesia. And it seemed like there was a few kind of distinct patterns that kind of seemed to line up with the whole fight or flight thing. You know, some folks were, you know, consistently said every time they woke up, like they would forewarn the staff, like, I am going to swing on you when I wake up. And they wouldn't believe them. And then they'd, you know, finally gain full consciousness and be being held down by like 3 different people, or get informed that they punched a nurse or something. It just, and then some of the folks, you know, were saying that they had this like fear, like as soon as they came in, like they didn't remember it, but they were told they were trying to climb out of the bed, they were trying to run away. And it just really made me think about the idea of trauma being that like imprinted frozen moment on your brain that, you know, even folks potentially without any traumatic experiences, when they come to without the upper brain, and it's just that kind of lower lizard, you know, brain, or the cerebral cortex is just trying to come back online, you know, we're at the whim of those. So it just made me think that folks with, you know, traumatic experiences, that's probably like, you know, like a snapshot that's just like imprinted on those lower parts of the brain, to where when, you know, like, yeah, the traumatic experience, the script they were using in the earlier episodes can take people back to it, but it probably wouldn't even take that, you know, just the idea of just your default state without the higher brain function is that traumatic state. And being able to, it's, being a big computer nerd, it really made me think of it in like a computer metaphor of like, where it's like you don't just need to go in and fix a bug in the higher level system, you know, to help somebody out. You need to get to the lower level, that baseline programming, you know, like rewriting the firmware. You know, you need to really get in and reorient people, need to like basically repaint their basic picture of the world, because that traumatic experience is like frozen on there. So there's a few things I saw this week that made me think back to the things from this book, actually, like what I had posted in Discord there about the segment from the Philip DeFranco show. That there were actual studies coming out lately talking about that they can show a clear, like, higher pain tolerance, higher, just can lift more weight when people are cursing, and kind of that emotional, you know, you're basically hacking your brain by kind of triggering those kind of higher, like kind of pushing towards the fight or flight kind of vibe, by, in order to like get more out of your body, you know. I don't know. So a lot of stuff is making me think about the stuff we're reading here in the book. So it's all very cool.
Oh, that's wonderful. There's I think it's a radio lab that's about the process of anesthesia, which I found like incredibly fascinating, because it goes into the mechanics of how the chemicals like interrupt the electricity that travels between neurons. So it's like you really do like completely lose like brain function, which is why you don't like remember the experience. And I love the connection to, you know, this kind of root memory that would come out of that. And that's another, like, one of my core motivations for studying healing from trauma, because like dementia and Alzheimer's is another, is an ailment that runs in my family. So like I might face it someday. And what I've noticed through, you know, my grandma and my stepfather and my father, and the different, you know, care facilities that they were in, you know, with other patients that were experiencing dementia, like what I noticed is like you almost revert to like your nervous system as a default way of being. So as the higher like brain function sort of becomes more compromised, you become a creature of your like pure emotions. And my grandma was like the most wonderful example of that. She was singing. Whoever came in, she was like your best friend. Like she was actually maybe the happiest like I had ever seen. My grandma was generally like a happy person no matter what. But when she got dementia, she turned into like pure bliss. Like she went through this state of bliss like day in and day out. And I like to think that it's because that kind of was what she lived as a core a value. She had this that her nervous system was attuned to be in that mood and that emotion. So when she did go into dementia, her natural nervous system state was what kind of dominated her experience. And that's one of the reasons I really want to heal, because I don't know, like, how is dementia going to work in VR? Like, am I going to remember how to get in here and like, but I won't know anybody. Like, I get so curious about getting how do I get out of VR? Is that coming? I just wonder about our 80 and 90-year-old selves and what that's going to mean for VR. But yeah, I loved that your comment sort of brought my mind back to that, one of my kind of core motivations for studying these. And let's see a couple of closing statements from Fuzz. Thank you. Yeah, of course. And everybody that shared, thank you. I like cold plunges as a structured way to deal with uncomfortable situations. The mind body goes through so many different stages. Oh, I'm curious. Is that like a physical cold plunge, like diving into cold water? That's interesting.
And Scott, if you
And
scroll up, there's actually some additional comments there for the
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me scroll up because I'd like to get some of that.
But I pretty much brought mine up, so don't worry about that one. I think above me there was a comment.
Oops, I gotta bump the mouse because the the emoji sign is like over the top. There we go. That's one of the things I miss about everybody that has a Quest is I don't have a pass-through camera. Let's see. So we got Genki XR. Is it Blurred? Yeah, I'm loving the name. Yeah, Blurdet. Animals for the win. Their unconditional love and lack of judgment can be so healing to the human soul. And oh my gosh, 100%. Growing up with a narcissist, sorry to hear that, and having married one for 10 years, that's understandable. We grow up and sometimes we involuntarily end up in it again. Has definitely increased my tolerance and patience for people reacting to their emotions and anxieties. Wow, yeah, turning that experience into deeper understanding for others, like, man, kudos. And we also got Drevian. Can relate to that. There was a time when I was in flight mode for 6 months, and it felt like my body and brain was on overdrive 24/7. Oh, so exhausting. almost felt like I was supercharged, but I don't know if that's the sort of mindset you want to be in all the time. Oh, definitely not. You know, and our society can encourage it too, right? Because, like, if you're productive, society doesn't mind that you're burning your candle at both ends. They love to see the work. Um, don't know if there's a way to activate it or if it's healthy to do so, like putting yourself in situations where you need to push through. Oh, this is interesting because I can speak to some experience with this, and it's also something that I'm practicing at work. Um, I can describe it as like an overly developed sense of responsibility, which is, and I wonder if this could even come into like a fawning category where if you're tasked with something at work, I can tap into my trauma response to give me the energy to like close out a work task. Like I can work on it straight through to like 3 a.m. to get it done. And that made me popular in my career when I was younger, you know, as a problem solver. But I also learned like how much of my body and my mental health I was sacrificing to like reach those heights of productivity. So it's funny, right? Because like it can be a superpower, but at the same time, it's a superpower that has a cost. And the more we go into these traumatic states, you know, there is more and more studies that are linking these traumatic experiences in the way they manifest into our body, like um, even towards illnesses. So it's definitely you want to find a definite balance because sometimes you're in emergency situations where you absolutely need your body to do that to survive. So it's not black and white, but for the most part, I think we want to practice ourselves out of it, find that social engagement, that side of life that's been elusive that you know we covet experiencing. You know, and hopefully we can definitely find more balance there. But yeah, thanks for a question. And I think this is a great example of when we talk about our norms. You know, if you have a curiosity and want to hear thoughts, I think that was a great way to express a question.
Hmm.
And yeah, thanks for the hearts, Blurdette. And I studied a little bit of Japanese, so yeah, Genki, Genki desu.
Hmm.
Mm. But let's see. With that, I think we got all of our. Heya, you got another hand up on the board. Did you have a comment? Maybe you can close this out.
Yeah, I'm just feeling the parallel between the two chats and this idea of that super cold water, that Arrow is actually saying they do as a way to deal with uncomfortable situations. That's that kickstart drive to like move ourselves out of that frozen state by literally like putting oneself in a frozen state, ironically, like that water
Mm.
melts us back into and I've even thought about that cold water response as a way to get our blood flowing to different systems. Like sometimes when I'm feeling like I'm getting ill, I will do a really, really hot shower to kind of get my blood flowing into different parts. But I also grew up with a family that saw it as the full cycle. You had to do a hot and then a cold and then a hot again, and that really refreshed the nervous system. So I did that as a kid, and sometimes it worked. But I think there's a way we look for ways to hack our nervous system to get ourselves to be productive. And
Mhm.
I really appreciate, Scott, what you said about, and this is partly why I use the word fix versus fawn, because I think that fix, from what you were talking about with work, right? That's a fix response of like, I can flow into this and construct something that will make me the hero to some degree. You got popular off of that. It was rewarding, but it also was brutal to your nervous system and your body. And
Mm.
and so
Yeah.
that is, I think what you said is exactly right. We're in a society that really praises productivity, and does not see it as a trauma response, and does not see it as an over response that hurts the individuals who are becoming those trailblazers, so to speak. But it does catch up, and the body is keeping the score on when we're pushing it in a way that is unhealing.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. And the idea of these physical experiences that can help us signal that parasympathetic response that was mentioned in the book. And in some ways, as shocking as like cold water to just remind, our nervous system that, everything's fine. I'm doing this thing to send you, an email that it's all good. It's all clear on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are good techniques, and one of the reasons I was hoping we could all do this is to share these little nuggets, because I am learning a ton from everybody, and I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate this commentary. And yeah, corporate America loves people that have
Oh
compromised
yeah.
nervous systems. So
Mm-hmm.
if you are
Oh yeah.
caught in that cycle of working the all-nighters to make sure that you can install version 2016 of SQL Server on the enterprise server, it is a superpower. But yeah, just you know, be aware and see if you can start leaning towards self-care and self-compassion. We can adopt that hero role, like you mentioned in the dot model, right? We can willingly adopt that fixer hero role, and maybe even not be aware, fully aware that we're doing it. We're putting others' needs ahead of ourselves, which is not bad. That's a form of altruism, but you don't want to do it to the degree that you're harming yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's the part to be aware of.
Well, and there is
And harming yourself doesn't. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
there
Yeah, thank
is
you.
evidence on humans have thought that our altruistic nature makes us separate from animals, and there's more and more evidence that there are species of animals, especially, that can be incredibly altruistic. And so, from that, they did a study where they disabled the frontal lobe, um, in humans temporarily by giving it kind of like a zap. Um, and found that humans had way deeper altruistic tendencies when their frontal lobe went away. And there was always
Mm.
this hypothesis that our altruism came from this part of our brain that animals don't have. And it turns out it's actually the reverse, that
Mm.
this is a primal response inside of us to put others in front of ourselves in a way where we could lose. And um, we've just never seen it that way. So we thought we were super special.
Mm.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and this is going to take study and practice, right, to understand the intricacies of all these behaviors, like fawning versus altruism versus hero versus fixing, all these nuances. So I'm really looking forward to the deeper that we go.
Mm-hmm. So just a reminder for people that maybe are in our chat, etc., that like this is the Discord is where you can also RSVP for this event, and loving the conversation.
All right, really getting near and dear to my heart here with a Star Trek reference, but wondering if we'd have been better off being like the Borg. I've often thought of this. Like, what if you got assimilated and you're just like, oh man, this is like what I've been waiting for.
Mm-hmm.
Except we don't go around trying to assimilate other species. Yeah, that's the part, right? Taking away the consent. and instead just learning and grow from them and offer them our collective knowledge. Oh, I love that. The bringing altruism to the Borg. Now that would be a movie I'd like to see. Well, cool. And Drevian, thanks for the emoji there too. Yeah, right back at you. We see ya. And Fuzz mentioned E.O. Wilson. I don't know who that is on altruism and sociobiology. So yeah, let me do a Google search on that one. And yeah, with that, I think we had a nice full event that probably ran over a little bit. So I really thank everybody for sticking it off. But maybe we'll put a pin in it there and come back next week for chapter 6. Really appreciate everybody's attendance.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, everybody.